about that?
Yes, well, 29th, we'll have the full moon, the worm moon they call it, in March, and it's less than in 1 hour after, an hour before, the closest approach of the moon until the year 2016, when in November that year we'll have a slightly closer approach. And then the next day is the equinox, and there are equinoctial tides. So the three major tide-raising forces are almost coincident. And time after time, this has been when you have large earthquakes. And
when you say the 29th, you mean the 29th of March?
The 19th through the 26th of March.
19th through the 26th of March.
Okay. That's a seismic window. And I've been off, like in that book about me, there's only been one quake of more than 5 magnitude in the San Francisco Bay Area since the aftershocks of the 89 quake. And that quake occurred in 2008, the day before Halloween, but on the very day of the maximum tidal force in about, of the year for sure. And the quake was 5.6, and it was very close to San Jose. And in fact, almost exactly the same place. The huge tides occurred at New Year's time in 1986. And I'd gone to a meeting of the Peninsula Geological Society and predicted a quake of 3.5 to 5.5 magnitude for the 29th of December through January 5th. And it hit right before I was going to work. And it shook me up in my home in San Jose, and felt down to Monterey and to Santa Rosa, and it was widely felt. And I got commendation from my old friend that used to work with the USGS. Jim will never doubt you again. That one shook me up pretty good. Well, I thought he was endangering his whole career because he had spent 35 years with the U.S. Geological Survey. Well, I only found out later he had just retired, and so he could say whatever he wanted. So he could support my theory.
Do you have suggestions for what people should seriously consider who are receptive to your input?
Sure, because this isn't just theoretical. There are many things people can do, and one thing, educate your family. What earthquakes can do and what they can't do, and it's not going to be houses falling into big cracks and cities destroyed and that sort of thing unless you have a big tsunami. That's something else that the Japanese were fully prepared for large earthquakes. Their design of the buildings and their construction was excellent, and they're just, world famous for being able to handle quakes of like 7 magnitude or so. But when you get a 9 and get this 30, 40-foot tsunami come sweeping in, and they have these seawalls that may be 15 feet high, they didn't do much to stop this huge wall of water coming up, and up to 6 miles inland. These fertile valleys and agriculture and little towns and all that just destroyed. And so you could say the timing could have been predicted, but they would not have known exactly where the quake might occur. I would hope we'll start hearing about all the animals that responded. We do know about the oarfish, and but before the Kobe quake, there were strange fish that came in the shallow water, and the fishermen were delighted to scooping them all up and netting them. And so they people that were knowledgeable were suspicious there might be a quake coming. And then later on, they were studying the mineral waters. They were from a spring not far away, and a really nice spring. They were bottled waters. And somebody got the idea to check the radon content. And sure enough, over the years, the radon content had been building up before the Kobe quake. Kobe quake occurred exactly 1 year after the Northridge quake. And when the Northridge quake hit, my whole family was down there at a family reunion for the Berklands. And I was there with my double cousin Nadine, looked at all her lifetime collection of Hummelware lining the shelves, and I said, you should get some museum tape or some plastic borders there to protect those. Oh, I know I should, but she lost 90% of it 2 weeks later with the Northridge quake. And many people reported lights in the sky, and of course it was, and it came like 4:30 in the morning on the 17th, and my window ended on the 16th, at midnight on the 16th. So my critics say, well, you missed that one. Yeah, but I only missed it by 4 hours, and people that went to sleep with my window open were awakened by the quake itself.
Most critics aren't really producing anything. They actually don't produce
Exactly.
anything because they're not trying to solve anything. They're just standing on the sidelines throwing mud at other people's work.
There's the ego factor, and the fact that their economy is. You imagine you go to Congress and you want to have somebody that you're going to analyze the comings and goings of pet cats or something. They get laughed off, and your budget is suddenly reduced. But there are some books out, and hope people are aware of the book by Helmut Tribuch called When the Snakes Awake, because he was directly affected when a major quake hit his hometown in Friuli, Italy. And his family survived. There were over 1,000 Italians that died. And he then went and was interviewing the people, and they said, "Oh, all of our cats just disappeared a couple of days before the quake, and most of them came back. The mother cats would take their kittens out of the houses. One farmer looked for his cats, and because there were rats and mice running around his farmyard, and there were no cats to be seen. They had taken off. Just as before a giant storm about to hit the Alps down there, the deer would come into the villages, without, more frightened about what the storm would do than they were about the people. Well, that sort of thing happens before earthquakes very frequently, and it's just a matter of paying attention to it and not laughing it off, like so many people do.
So the one that's coming, you're sensing, is going to be
Southern California or up around the Pacific Northwest. That's the major concern. And you're more in Southern California. The last big one, 8 magnitude, was in 1857, and that was in Fort Tejon. And it was on the day of the full moon, and the San Andreas Fault went right through a circular sheep corral, 30 feet in diameter. It turned that sheep corral into the letter S. So we know there was 30 feet of horizontal rupture on the San Andreas with that great earthquake. At 2 inches a year, if you do the arithmetic, you'll see you had up to 26 feet of strain built up on the San Andreas compared to the 30 feet of rupture. So generally, we figure we're pretty close to another major rupture on the San Andreas down there. And it would be mostly in the Mojave and well to the east of Los Angeles, but the buildings that were built under modern, methods are relatively safe as long as they had solid foundations and the foundations were anchored to the main structure. If the main structure is a beautiful box, but the foundations are inadequate, the box will move, a long ways and shake up people and things.
Have you taught other people to be able to do what you know how to do?
I'm not a structural engineer, but I've certainly studied and went to a number of meetings, and some of them are aware of the factor about tides. But mostly they're not going to talk about it in public meetings.
I mean, are you privately able to teach others how they can calculate the tides to know when there's a danger zone?
Well, every year I get a calendar showing the maximum tidal periods, and I have it all highlighted in orange when the window was open, and we have that to open here on the 19th. Now, interestingly, the 19th was the day when the swallows were supposed to return to Capistrano, every year, March 19.
Right.
Well, it's just coincidental. It also happens that the 20th, which is the day of the equinox, in the Baha'i faith, they recognize that as the first day of the year. I just learned about that a little while ago, and on my newsletter, I said I don't think it relates to an earthquake, but certainly the timing is there. We have several things that people should do, not only informing their own family about what quakes can do and what they can't do, but you should have a contact person in some, say Phoenix or Reno or someplace long away from the coast if you're concerned about the timing of a quake, so that you can relieve your own cares and concerns